Hi, and welcome to the SJ Child Show. The SJ Child Show brings value to families through education, resources, and lots of laughs. You can find us on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. You can also find our special children's books at sjchilds.org. This month is April Autism Action Month. All of our guests in April will be autism warriors, and we are celebrating them and bringing this to the forefront. Enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to the SJ Childs Show. I'm your host, SJ Childs, and today I have a very special guest who is a mentor, a friend, a mom, and an autism activist and advocate. And I am so honored and happy to have her with us today, Michele Portlock, who owns the company Navigating the Spectrum. Hi, Michele.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. This will be fun. This is going to be great.
I agree, definitely. You know, and you and I are both mothers to autistic children. And so we can have a really great discussion today. All of our episodes in April are going to be about autism. And we are saying this is Autism Action Month. Let's take action. Let's educate. So yeah, we're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and yeah.
Sure. Well, so I launched Navigating the Spectrum. I actually really launched it just in September of 2020. So it hasn't been too long. I completed a master's in behavior therapy a little over a year ago, or just about a year ago. And I decided to do that because there were some behaviors that I have two children who have official autism diagnosis, and one who's on the wait list to be tested, my youngest, and one son who's neurotypical. So we just run the gamut over here. We've got all kinds of fun happening. And so I just felt like as a parent that I wanted to know more and I wanted to understand more, and behaviors. I just wanted to understand the why behind behaviors because there were things that my children were struggling with, and I really wanted to be able to help them with it. So my reason in going back and getting my master's was for my children. And then once I got into the program, I was overwhelmed in a good way, I think, with the amount of information that I was learning. And I thought, parents need to know this. I can't be the only one. And I know I'm not. But I really just became passionate about sharing what I had learned and tapping into other autism activists, autism specialists, autistic individuals, and sharing that information through my podcast. So I have a podcast called Navigating the Spectrum with Michele Portlock. And that's the free arm to my business and what I do. And then I also essentially am an autism consultant, essentially. And my focus has been to help parents. That's where my focus has been, to help them navigate autism and the autism world. But it's been interesting because I've seen a little pivot in my business over time. And that has taken shape in the fact that I've started helping autistic young adults launch in life. And that I have really found so much joy in that. And we work on social skills. We work on resumes. A friend of mine she's a professional, and her focus is on women and their resumes. Her business is called Faithful Career Moves, but we created a resume process together. It's a workbook, and that's free also. And so I've been helping some autistic young adults create resumes, walking them through the process and what that looks like and what it really can look like to launch in life and what that means. So that's been super rewarding. But generally, I work with parents trying to educate and guide. So
And it's
That's a lot of
so,
information.
yeah, it's so helpful. Our parents are really, they're the front line, and they are the ones who
Mhm.
really need the education and the support. And they need all of those types of resources to be able to guide their children in the correct and not correct, but what feels best for their family.
Yes.
Because, each family is different. And just like you
Mhm.
said, you're, running in your family, and here I say we thrive in chaos over here all the time. If there's not somebody awake, there's somebody asleep, there's not somebody eating, there's, just it's all over the place. But everyone's happy. And right,
Mhm.
isn't
Yeah.
that just kind of the underall, that's where we want it, the tone to be.
Yeah, we do. We want them to feel safe and comfortable and happy and thriving to the best of their abilities.
Yes, definitely. And I'm sure that, a lot of that comes with possibly finding out our children's learning styles. Isn't that how we need to
Mhm.
start in finding out, are they visual learners, are they audio learners, hand over hand, finding out those easier kind of like life hacks, if you will, to
Mhm.
not only assume that every student or every child is going to excel at only one way of learning.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's one of the podcasts I did in the past was with a woman named Melissa Durkee, and she has a business called Navigating Education. And that is what she does. I took my son there, and I've actually referred so many people to her because I believe in what she does. And it piggybacks off of exactly what you just said. Our children can do a little battery of tests, and it essentially says, this is what kind of learner my child is, and or I am. I could do the
Yeah.
test if I wanted to. And it shows you where you're strong, where your strengths lie, and maybe where, I mean, I can call them weaknesses, but maybe where we're not so strong. And so I think that's important for everyone, but particularly our children on the autism spectrum, because we want our kids to be able to lean into their strengths. We're trying to build self esteem. We're trying to create an environment where they can succeed. And I think that all comes together when they know, hey, look what I'm really good at.
Mm-hmm.
And how about I find things that match up with what I'm really good at and lean into that and find my way in that way?
And there's so many possibilities now with technology, with
Yes.
our world, and and a lot because with the pandemic, and we've had to really um lean on technology, right? We've had to really
Mm-hmm.
move our lives into this world of visual technology, and we've had to learn a new way. And
Mm-hmm.
I think moving forward, everybody would love to say, oh, get back to normal. That's not the case. It's not going to be a normal. It's going to be a new way of living, which is,
Mm-hmm.
more. Now we've found probably a lot of children that have said, this is great for me. I love to
Yeah.
learn online. This is so much better. And they're
Yeah.
excelling, whereas
Mm-hmm.
they would have never had the chance to have even known that.
Mm-hmm.
So I
That's
really
so
like that.
true.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. I think we're opening up a world to just being more open to blending ideas and blending. I mean, right now, my kids are finally going back full time. And we were doing blended school. We were doing remote learning and in-person learning. And I thought that was actually pretty tricky
Yeah.
to kind of um, do both. But I noticed that my autistic son prefers it that way. And they don't, unfortunately, if you're going to school in person, you can only go to school in person, or you can choose to be remote. And he
Yeah.
does need some in person instruction. And so we chose to send him full time, but it's not his preference.
Yeah.
So it's just what he does. He excels best in that type of environment.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah, I have all these ideas, things I'd love to do to help to help autistic individuals succeed in a variety of environments.
Yeah.
So
World changers. We're on our way. That's for sure. I really want to talk about our personal lives, and not too
Mhm.
personal. But I want to talk about it in the sense that I wanted to, like I had mentioned earlier, I really want to focus on females with autism, because
Sure.
I think it's really unknown. It's still such this
Mhm.
unknown, almost like a stigma. And I I really want to bring it to the forefront, kind of how, you have a daughter who is
Mhm.
older, who was
She's
wasn't
18.
diagnosed until she was older. And then
Mhm.
now a little one who is being diagnosed younger. Tell me what you kind of how you look at it now, and how your perception has changed.
That's a great question. So, first of all, I knew nothing about autism when I was a new mom. I really just didn't know. And we even had a really great neighbor family that lived in my neighborhood growing up, and their son was clearly on the autism spectrum. I see that now, but I didn't see it then. And he would actually ring our doorbell and play. We'd open the door and he'd play the guitar and sing Beatles songs. And then he would say, okay. And then we knew when he said, okay, that he would turn around and leave. And it was the cutest thing. So the greatest experience or lesson that I learned from that experience was from my mom and her kindness. She was always so incredibly kind to him. And we knew it was unique
Yeah.
behavior, but she was so kind that we, as her children, just learned, oh, yeah, even with children and adults that may have unique behaviors, you just show kindness.
Yeah.
So luckily, I had that foundation. So when I became a new mom, I was watching my oldest, and she gives me permission to mention her name, so I can say my oldest is Brielle. Plus, she's my podcast number 1.
Yeah.
So you can hear her, and we hear her name all the time through the podcast. So she, she was verbal. She had no verbal issues, and she actually was advanced in her verbalizations. I mean, one of her first words was calculator. And I kind of felt like if I had known what I know now, maybe I would have just paid a little closer attention or known what to look for,
Yeah.
And she used to she's excellent with patterns, and she would create patterns all the time. We had colored tile games, and she would lay them out in patterns. And she was creating shapes with the different colors, just things that kids her age weren't generally doing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure. I just kept thinking, wow, this child is very gifted. And she is, but I also noticed a lot of sensory issues, but I didn't know what they were called at the time. So I just thought it was difficult behavior.
Yeah.
And I feel sad now when I look back because I got frustrated more than I wish I had.
Yeah.
Now that I lived through it and I understand why, I just thought at the time, man, I have a really difficult child. She's very stubborn and doesn't want to put these shoes on that I just bought her, and won't wear jeans, and won't, like, brushing her hair was a nightmare and for her. But I internalized it as a mom,
Yeah.
as I must be doing something wrong here. So I went to different professionals, her pediatrician at the time, and he was a great pediatrician, but he didn't know what he was looking at, and neither did I. And so he said, she's fine, she'll grow out of it. But when I speed it up to when she was around 14 years old, I couldn't take it for her anymore. It was so painful to watch her struggle. And I had tried so many different ways to figure out what was going on. And she had clinical anxiety diagnosis, but that mom intuition, I knew there was something else. And so I took her to an autism testing center. Once I had a friend give me a book on sensory processing disorder, and I'd never heard of it. And I read it and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. This is the missing piece I've been looking for. I didn't understand that was even a thing. No one had told me, and I'd done a lot of research. So she got a diagnosis, and it all came together. The sensory and the mental health pieces came together as autism.
And how old was she when she got her diagnosis?
She was 14.
14.
And she was, and I felt so sad about that, because what you keep hearing from specialists is early intervention is key. And so I kept thinking, well, we missed it. So now what? And, the what was, we'd been doing it all along. I had been sending her to different therapists and cognitive behavior. She'd done cognitive behavioral therapy, which was actually really challenging for her, because you're working on changing the way you think about your mental thoughts and your processes. So that's challenging because it requires change.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, but it is, I believe in cognitive behavioral therapy, but she was doing that. And we had tried neurofeedback, which I will say a lot of specialists bring that up. And I would ask a lot of questions before I would jump into neurofeedback. I'm sure it has its place. It did not change things for my daughter.
Yeah.
And so what I learned is there are a lot of therapy options out there, and not all of them will be a good fit for your child.
The truth? No, that is the truth. Yeah. And don't just give up on one. If you go somewhere and it doesn't work, if you go to the pediatrician and your child is acting out of the normal milestones, if you will, you seek more therapists, seek more doctors. Don't stop, because you as a mom, me as a mom, we know our children. We know their day in and day out behaviors, and kind of like you said, not knowing, with it being your very first child and not having any autism experience, I can completely relate to that. Something that exactly what came up for us, DG was 16 months old. So we were very, we were able to get him that early intervention and things like that. But now we're coming to, my daughter is 9 years old. And now she is exactly where your little one is, and that is on the list to be tested. And it's incredible to think, here I've been a decade-long autism, advocate. I've been advocating for my son. I've been teaching in their schools, writing children's books, yada, yada, all of these things. Yet it was under my nose with not only my husband, as you know, but also my daughter and my oldest daughter, who is 21, and who we also spent 12 to 13 years going through different therapists here, there, and everywhere to never, ever get a real answer. And now I know why. And that's because the idea that girls have autism, the patterns that they show are just like male and female, 100% different from one another. There are no, we have to look at it that way now, don't we?
Well, the other thing to remember for me, I have clients who have young daughters who were diagnosed really young, but often that shows up because their daughters may require extra supports from the start. And so, maybe they are nonverbal. Maybe they have, there are some learning disabilities that are evident. And so you go and the testing takes place. But when you look at girls in particular who need or require less supports, particularly academic, then they can get overlooked.
It's horrible.
It is. And so because they're missing out on some of these very specific therapies that they could be a part of, but even outside of that, it's the understanding that they gain of who they are and what they like, what why, the why. Why do I struggle with this? Why is this an issue for me? And then it also opens the door for parents to have more understanding and empathy and compassion as to, there's a quote that I actually, it's something that I say, it's a mantra. If she could, she would.
Yeah.
And I didn't know to say that for years.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know that she couldn't.
Yeah.
And I just thought she should be able to. So why is this such an issue? I didn't understand. But then as we got the diagnosis and as my son continued to struggle, and yes, he does show autism differently than my daughter. There are some similarities, but they show it differently. And, her stimming was in, she kind of taps her leg up and down. And I didn't understand that as stimming. I didn't even get what that was. But my son, his is a little more typical. He does pacing round and round and round in circles as he's processing information. And so it looks more a little outside what you'd consider the norm to be, and if you can call it norm.
I know,
I don't
right?
even know anymore.
I agree.
So, but I'm just saying there is a difference. There are differences. And even with my youngest now, who's, she's 5, and I see things that she does. She just built a computer, I'll say, out of Jenga pieces, but they were all lined up. It was all in a straight line on the bottom, all in a straight line behind. And that's how she wanted it to be. And once things are in order for her, then she can create. And so a lot of times when you're coming up with an autism diagnosis, they ask, are they more black and white? And I think, well, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of, a little bit. Things have to be in order, but then it's like once she sees the order, her little mind just unlocks and she creates all kinds of beautiful things.
I love that.
And I think that that's probably pretty typical, but with girls, it's just a little harder to see.
Yeah.
So
what do you think about the idea? And this is going to be challenging our, laws of medical everything. Oh, sure. They love me. What do you think about changing the language though? Disorder, horrible word.
Yeah.
What if we called it a reorder of thinking? What if we got rid of the dis, we dis the dis, and then we reorder, because isn't it really the truth? There's no, they're not, they looked at, with the stigma, with the language, disorder, disability, it shows a lack of something. And I just hate that because, as you know, in my family, boy, we have over the top creators over here. Like there's
you do.
Lacking in this house, and everyone is, basically on the spectrum, but they have reordered thinking processes. My husband thinks in, he goes into a room and he can literally see where the paint lines are off, where the wood has not been put in correctly. Like he is a perfectionist when it comes to those things. And those kinds of things trigger him and really bother him to, they're right. Just like you said, he needs things to be in order. With our son, the most amazing things have been happening. We're seeing this new sense of flexibility that he's been having with us and with his rigid behaviors. Yeah. And it's all through Nintendo Tamagotchi World. What this is like a role-playing, kind of like a lifestyle game in which he starts out as a baby or whatever and grows his character into an adult, but he's making choices throughout the way. Like, hey, mom, this girl is my friend. Should I give her a cookie or should I kick her in the knee? And I'm like, well, she's your friend. These are what kinds of things do we do for our friends? But he's going through these things on his own. He's bringing us in once in a while, but for the most part, but we're seeing just this great flexibility in his understanding in ways we couldn't have prepared him for. He's asking us about, will I be able to date someday? Could I propose to someone? And that just warms my heart. He's 11 years old. It's many years away, but the fact that he has the desire to do that, the fact that, a doctor one day said, oh, he'll never move out of the house. He'll never have relationships. He'll never get a job, things like that. Well, I don't believe that. I will never believe a never can happen. And so I think that that's where us as parents, like you said, we find their strengths, we build on those, and we build their self-confidence, which then in turn helps them deal with the parts that they have more struggles and challenges with.
Which is common for even the rest of us who aren't autistic, because I for sure have strengths and weaknesses. And there are things like my kids have these incredible mathematical minds. I do not. I do not. I thought I was really good at math. And then in high school, when I hit, the higher maths, I thought, you know what? I hate all of this spatial math. I'm out.
Exactly. Math? No.
I'm like, I'm done. I had completed as much as I needed to. And I switched to some physics or whatever. There wasn't as much math and three-dimensional spatial awareness, which, I'm not great at. So my point is we all have it. It's just that my struggles, the reason why I wouldn't be considered autistic is because it hasn't created sometimes debilitating experiences. And I haven't needed extra supports for some of the struggles that I've had. That doesn't mean I haven't hired tutors in the past for myself. But I also, one of the key markers in autism is often social interaction milestone. You're not hitting those social milestones. And I used to think that milestones weren't such a big deal. And then I realized, okay, well, that is how we track. Because there are average, there are averages. And so that's how we track. And that's how we say, oh, it looks like maybe my child does need supports. So it doesn't mean that they're not going to meet their own personal potential. It just means, hey, look, here's where we see there's a need. And so they are important in that way. But your idea of dropping disability, I actually do think that there, as we know, a lot of our children on the autism spectrum have really remarkable skill sets in very specific areas. And sometimes we call that savants. And in other areas, we just call it just gifted. Often it's referred to as twice exceptional.
Exactly.
And that does not mean twice easy.
No. And I can be the first to say that, with a son who has memorized 25 languages at 11 years old, who still needs help, in filling up his water bottle. He still needs help putting his shoes on some days. And there are, we go into the school systems and for us, we've just come up to brick walls. Just absolutely. We're sorry. Your son is, does algebra in kindergarten. He can't, we don't have a first grade that can accommodate him. Good luck. Oh, it's so hard and so frustrating. But at the same time, I was able to find a great program at home, be home with him, not worry about if he's trying to elope from school because he's not getting the right kind of support.
Sure.
Which unfortunately did happen and has been a part of our lives, which is all the best to keep him home, right?
So
it's he doesn't ever want to run away from home.
Yeah. It's scary. And there are kids who do elope from home. They get that front door open and they're heading out. And I mean, what you learn is there are reasons behind those behaviors, right?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I guess my feeling about being a part of the autism community is just taking the time and having the consideration to understand the why behind our children's behaviors and their actions. There is a reason they're trying to communicate something in some way. And so that requires patience, and it requires on our part as the parent, and learning the skill sets to determine why. What is my child seeking or trying to get away from, or what are they trying to communicate here? And I just think it's important to try to understand our child and try our darn best to meet them where they are. So we can help them right where they are.
No, you said that right. And that is so true, is that, and I find this in my autism advocacy group, that when parents reach out, how can I connect with my child? I don't like these things. I don't understand this, what he does. And I say to them, you're the adult, suck it up. Too bad you don't like Minecraft. Get on there. You play for a half hour. You let them teach you something. You enter their world. That is where those bonds of trust start to form, therefore opening up so much more for a relationship and depth in that kind of sense.
That's so true. For example, my son, who's 13, he loves anime. And when I say love, I really mean he's all in. Like, he's got anime pajamas, but they almost look like a costume, but it's soft. Like pajamas. And he watches lots of anime shows. We're somewhat careful because he's 13, because not all anime is appropriate for young children. So we try to be mindful of that. But I don't enjoy anime myself.
I don't either. Yeah, I agree I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But in order to connect with him, my husband and I will say, show us your favorite anime series. And we'll sit. I'm going to be totally honest. I can't get through the whole series. I've watched like 3 or 4 episodes. I'm like, okay, I think I've tapped out. But the point is when he talks about his characters that he loves, I can talk to him about it. I can ask him about it and say, so he's taking private boxing lessons right now because his anime characters are strong. And they can defend themselves or whatever. And so we're teaching him how, and he loves it. He's really good at it. That's one of his anime characters plays the drums. And so now he's taking private drum lessons.
Oh, great.
So we're finding how to pull interest out from what he loves.
Yes.
And incorporate that into his life. And so you're right. Meet them where they are, and magic happens in that space.
It's so true. It is so true. Because when we expect our children to be adults, when we expect them to be aware of their experiences that they have no idea they need to be aware of yet, we are putting so much pressure, undue, kind of pressures on our kids, not to mention, when you come up, like you said, with the anime. I remember back when my oldest loved comics and anime as well. And the same thing. I was just like, no way. Like, this is not, you're not going to do your reading a comic book. Why not? Like, that was so silly of me. Why would I not allow that to happen? Because it didn't fall into the same interests as I had. Well, that's ridiculous. Now luckily, bless her heart, I've had all of the she was like my makeup kid. Like I got to just mess her up as much as, no, I'm just kidding, and then just like, oh,
but
okay,
we learned
now I
from
know
our
what
mistakes.
to do.
Here we are because we've learned from our mistakes.
Yeah. And she's, luckily her and I have a great relationship and we can talk about all of these things. Like, oh my gosh, I should never have done that. Like I should have let you be more expressing and more free and independent. And so she knows now that I was just doing it out of love. She's my stepdaughter and I felt an obligation to be perfect. I felt an obligation to never seem like I wasn't giving her the exact right path that she needed, whether she liked it or she was interested or not. If it covered me, then it was fine. But interesting parenting, right? We all learn.
Well, but you know what, Sarah, you bring up a good point. It is tricky because our kids they also live in this world. And so as parents, we feel like, but I need to teach you what it takes to survive in this world and to function in this world. And sometimes it feels scary. Like for me, I'm like, wow, my son, like I said, it is a special interest, anime. And I thought, but I don't want him to be made fun of. I don't want him to. So there is that protective nature in the parent. But I think, well, they're not going to care if we support them as parents. It starts at home. Yeah. And then when people, my son, I've been with him when other kids are like, that's so weird. And he said, well, then you just don't get it. Yeah. And he's fine with that because it started with us saying, teach me. And then we started talking about it and made it kind of exciting for him. I mean, Christmas, you should have seen his Christmas. It was anime shirts, an anime pillowcase, anime posters. Yes. It's not what I would have chosen for him, but it's what he finds the greatest joy in.
100%.
And so I decided, as long as I don't say to him, that's so weird. Yes. And why are you doing that? That's just so, so weird. As long as it's not harmful for him. Yeah. And as long as it's appropriate behavior, then I feel like just embrace it and see how you can get creative with what they love. Yeah. So
I agree. And I think that it does come up with a lot of parents, like, not understanding how to connect. So just pay attention, be less in your world, more in theirs, and just really just try to, be who they need you to be at that moment in time. Yes. When they do need you. So I am so excited and thankful that we got to have this amazing conversation. I think we covered a lot of spaces and we could probably keep going for hours and hours and hours, but we couldn't rely on anyone to really listen probably for that long either.
I'm out. That's what they say. I'm out.
Right. Oh, but it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we go, tell us where we can find you on social media and business webpage.
Sure. Yeah, you can find me. If you follow me on Instagram, it's navigating.the.spectrum. And I post tools and resources and stories and thoughts, all those things. And hopefully you find some of that helpful. So you can follow me there. And then you can find my website at micheleportlock.com, and Michelle's with one L. And and then you can also take a look at my podcast, which is Navigating the Spectrum with Michele Portlock. So those are places of contact.
And when you go to check out her podcast, make sure to step on, what is it, episode 13, I think, 12 or 13, Marriage on the Spectrum with Sarah Bradford.
Yes, it is.
And go listen to us. Yeah, excellent. It is excellent. It's all about my marriage to my husband who has Asperger's. So it is fascinating and beautiful, and all of that great stuff.
All the great stuff.
Yes.
All the great stuff.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'll make sure to put all those links down in the description so everybody knows where to find Michele Portlock with Navigating the Spectrum. And thank you so much for being here today, Michele.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
It was so great to have you. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Kind of guy that keeps you warm at night when you are cold. I'll grab some blankets from my bed, wrap them around your chest, and I'll pull you close. We'll flip some channels to find out there's nothing on right now to ease your mind. Sit back, relax, there is no rush, no need to speed things up. All we have is time to think about the future, forget about the past. Time to figure out a way to make this moment last. To make this moment last. To make this moment last. So let's make this the kind of love that we've been dreaming of when we sleep at night. We'll get a little house to live in, have a couple kids, and we'll sleep tight. Cause baby, all we really need are just a couple things to stay alive. And everything else in between, just trust my heart, you'll see. We're slowly coming. Time to think about the future, forget about the past. Time to figure out a way to make this moment last. To make this moment last. To make this moment last. Sunrises, sunsets, I won't let you forget that I need you. Spring comes as spring goes, forever you will know that I love you. Sunrises, sunsets, I won't let you forget that I need you. Spring comes as spring goes, forever you will know that I love you.